Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, HR Top Priorities for 2024. My name is Vinicius Coelho, and I am the Vice President of People and Culture at Time Doctor. Here I am in the picture here in the presentation. I've been working in HR for the past 9 years, and I have a strong background in people organizational development. I've been doing lots of work in corporate and HR techs, and it's a pleasure for me to be here today to talk about how can we focus our priorities in 2024, right? And to get started, I think it's very important to acknowledge that over the past decade, and more specifically since the pandemic years, about 4 or 5 years ago, we have seen a huge transformation in HR, right? And I think it's very clear to all of us HR professionals. We have evolved from being an operational and bureaucratic department into a multidisciplinary team. We have evolved to different nomenclatures as well. Some of us are leaving the human resources to people and culture, people operations, employee experience, you name it. There is an area of nomenclatures, and at the end of the day, we're just doing the work of taking care of people. But we also have been placed in front of many challenges and challenging situations, right? We had to develop a business acumen to truly understand companies' needs. But not only that, we were put at the forefront of the business. Leaders, especially CEOs and executives, are starting to understand the importance of our work, right? So, to talk about these priorities of 2024, and I'm not trying to be pretentious here. I'm just trying to share my views of those priorities, right? They can be different from business to business, and some of you might find these very accurate to your needs. Some of you might not. But the main idea of this webinar is to show a little bit of the challenges that I will face as a VP of people in my team and my company, and that you might face as well, right? So we will divide our webinar today in three main topics, right? So we'll start with transforming, not transitioning. Then we're moving into people and culture as a force for good. And then we're moving into empowering and engaging employees. And again, these might not reflect your top priorities, but definitely they will be priorities in your teams over the next year or this year, right? We're just starting. All right. Starting with transforming, not transitioning. This could mean a lot of different things, but what we'll be covering here today is all related to embracing change. And there's a lot of things that we can say about embracing change as well. But I think we should go first into some very relevant facts, right? So, according to a recent Gartner's research, CEOs and CFOs are actively looking into three topics. So let's get started with growth, right? There is a lot of pressure to deliver results, and HR has been called out to deliver meaningful, measurable ROI, right? It's very, very difficult to be able to bring those numbers. Sometimes we don't even understand where to get started, and we have to. We have to be able to measure that growth for the C-suite, for the executive suite of our companies. Next, technology. We are walking towards a future where HR will manage not only people, right, but also machines and all its wonders. And AI is a great example of how our jobs can be positively affected by that. And lastly, talent. The market is very tough right now, and I think all of you might know that. And there is an ongoing shortage of talent. So we have to get creative in finding great people here. And of course, those three are just the main ones when we're talking about embracing change. And I'm going to deep dive in some of those aspects right now. And the question here, the real question is, what do they actually mean, right? It means that we have to evolve the HR operating model. We have to prepare and embrace change. And there are a few things that you can get ahead now, right? So define the strategic vision of your HR. I'll give you an example of what we did at Time Doctor, right? I joined the company just over a year ago, over a year and a half ago, actually. And we were at that time, the company was at a point where it was transitioning, starting a transition from a more operational focus, documentational focus HR into a team that really takes care of people, that really looks into the development, the growth, the retention of people. And of course, there was already hiring and lots of things going on. So that was the work that I started, and we've done it. We evolved to a people and culture structure. And that structure doesn't have to be a big one for you to do all the work that we have to do, but it has to be a structure that has one thing in mind always: taking care of people, right? We have to be the people centric force within our companies. And these transformations of HR into people and culture, at the end of the day, they're just names, right? They're just names that are changing around, but it has a deeper meaning when you look at the underlying factors of transforming an operative area into an area that is more proactive and also challenges itself daily, right? And one of the very important things here that, to start analyzing that growth and including that technology and looking into talent is to make a true assessment of your analytics, right? As HR, we manage and collect a lot of data. And the question is, are you sharing that data with your leaders, managers, C level? How are you sharing that? What are the reports you're getting? What are you showing them, right? Um, we need to make sure that the data we're sharing with them, it's data that will help the company make better decisions, right? So we have to align KPIs, reportings. We have to sit down with leadership within the company. We have to make sure that we are bringing that data, and we are bringing that data ready to be analyzed and help people, help leadership especially, taking decisions here, right? And we also have to set boundaries. As an HR leader, you're responsible to help setting the table, defining priorities. Sometimes it's the loudest voice who wins, but we have to make sure that is the business and organizational priorities, right? So we have to take a stand. We have to make sure we are helping leadership into defining what the focus will be, right? And again, it's visible that there is a movement to challenge the HR naming and structure, and that's why you're seeing a lot of that movement coming from, right? Um, I'll give you some examples here on what it means, the difference of HR and people and culture, right? So just a few of them, and you can find many more of them around, and you probably been experienced some of them already, right? So when you look into HR as a documentational and operative area, it's all about defining policies, right? So HR defines policies and employees follow them. People and culture works with the team to co-create guidelines. The main idea is that we bring people to the table and understand a way of building policies that make sense for everyone, but are still focused on the business needs. The second one is HR is a support group. So HR needs to support. HR will help everyone. HR is always there on the background, making sure everything is getting taken care of, right? People and culture leads. As a people and culture team, you should look into being ahead of the game, being proactive, going to talk to people. We have an initiative at Time Doctor called People Check, and I'll go into that, in a moment. But it's about being proactive. It's about going out of our comfort zone and asking people and trying to be as transparent as possible of what's going on right now, and to make sure we're building the trust between HR and employee, HR and leadership as well. Another thing we can say is compliance first, right? So HR is all about compliance, making sure documentations are fine, that everyone is following them. It's all about the same thing with the policies, right? And as people in culture, we leave the compliance first. Very important. But we put experience first. We make sure that the bureaucracy is out of the game, that we make sure the policies are clear and are there, that people are participating on them, and that we are following all the company procedures, right? We're still following them. We're not leaving them besides, but we're making sure that we're putting people at the front. And as the last one that we'll share, HR helps create company culture. If anyone tells you that, oh no, HR doesn't do that, no, we do it. Even if it's by documenting processes, we're helping transform company, we're helping create company culture actually. But what people and culture does is that they bring people together to contribute in culture building, to align mission, vision, values, to evolve them into DNAs, right? So you've seen a few companies working with core values and DNAs and just transforming the mission, vision, and values into something that is a bit more tangible that people can relate better to. And those are, there's a lot of things that can be put here, but I'm just giving you some examples of that, right? Does it mean that if your company you have an HR department, you're not changing your structure? Absolutely not. The point here is that a lot of the companies that do all the things I said earlier had made a movement to change the HR name, right? So a lot of companies, especially technology companies, are looking into that change right now, right? Um, as I said earlier, Time Doctor have made that movement as well, not long ago, right? If you look into it, it's almost like we're going to change the way we manage people, so we change the area names as well. That's kind of how it relates, right? So people and culture sounds friendlier and aligns, with what you do by taking care of people in the organization, right? And to add to it all, there is an ongoing talk about back to the office or hybrid or remote. The reality at the end of the day is that, whatever it is, a company needs to have a strong culture. And that's key to the success of your organization. It doesn't matter if you're remote, if you're hybrid, or even if you're going back to the office, right? People need to count on HR or people and culture to find that help, to understand, okay, where am I now? What am I going to do? What's going on, right? HR needs to be supportive. People and culture needs to be supportive, right? Uh, and yes, HR is, or people and culture, right? Let's start calling people and culture now. People and culture is extremely important in helping designing those back to office or hybrid policies, right? All about writing communication styles, making sure people understand how to communicate, in a synchronous mode, or how they can communicate while they're in an office and some people might not be in office that day, right? We also have to support leaders in all people matters in those moments, right? We should be the champion. I think the best word here is that we should be the champions to gather information from all corners of the company, through the people surveys, through 101s, and through the people checks. And I'll tell you right now about that. So the people check is to me, a great initiative that we started. We started last quarter and we're moving along that now. And I think that, in a different way or similar, if you can do it, you should do it. The people check is an outgoing process where the HR team, the people and culture team, goes to each individual of the company. I'll give you an example. At Time Doctor, we have 3 people doing that, talking to 150 people. We have around 150 employees in the company. And we go and we set up a call, and that call has a very specific objective, is to first understand how that person is doing, understand the relations between that person and their leadership, and to understand what are they looking at, right? I'm happy with my current role, I'm not very happy with that. I'm seeing this movement here. What does it mean? It's a short call, about 20 to 30 minutes. And the beautiful thing about that call is that it is not anonymous, right? But it's secretive. So the information from that call doesn't go to the managers with the name of the employee, with the area of the employee. It goes in a report unnamed, where we do, like a word cloud with everything that was said there, and we align with leadership. What are the main recurrent issues, or what are the main recurrent successes we're having? And we plan for the next quarter. We plan directive actions, or we plan global actions for the whole company. And we're going to do that every quarter. And I think that that's a great initiative on aligning with people, on getting to know them better, building that trust, that bridge of trust that sometimes is difficult as an HR member or HR leader to build with people, because the majority of times in a lot of companies, they look at our area as something that belongs to the executive management. We only look at the company's needs. Yes, we look at the company's needs, but we are people centric. We take care of people, right? So with all that being said, right? Just changing here into the human resources, into people and culture part, right? So I think that's about it. It's about going upfront, going to people, being proactive, understanding how things are happening, what is happening at the moment, and taking notes and gathering data and helping management taking action, right? And in this, evolution of the HR operating model, there is one thing that we cannot deny, is that technology is here to stay, and specifically, there's many kinds of technology. I think the majority of the HR teams today already works with softwares, especially software as a service, such as recruiting, applicant tracking systems, or documentation process systems. So there are many tools around that help us, but there is more. We can go further. Let's look at AI, right? So it starts with ChatGPT. You can start writing more, have a capability of writing more documents, having a capability of, as an HR team to help more people faster, or as a customer success or service team to help more clients, customers at the same time. You can, that AI helps engineering teams or product teams fulfill projects faster, and it can help, HR as well, because we are under constant pressure to evaluate and enhance performance. And AI it's a great way of doing that. And when we talk specifically about AI for HR or for people and culture, there are a few things that we can do that will definitely help, right? So first of them, learning and development. You can use AI to help on daily tasks, collaborations with others, accessing resources that will build a library of training and help on the growth and development of the teams. And they're not going to do the work for you, but they're going to help you organize that better and faster. Technology stack, right? So facilitating employee feedback, recognition, and well-being, automate administrative tasks and create pipelines that will help you spend more time interacting with people instead of just processing documents. Also integrate with other team systems, giving you access to performance metrics, right? It's very common to have different performance metrics for different teams in the company. And it's, very, very important that we as an HR team have access to that so we can help understand and measure performance, in the different ways of measuring performance that any company can have. So I think to end this first part of our webinar today is it's just, I think, to suggest, right, AI is not going to replace humans, but humans with AI are going to replace humans without AI. All right, so we're moving to part two. We talked about transforming, transitioning, and now we're going to talk about people and culture as a force for good, right? We're going to be talking about a few different topics on this subject, but the main one, the one that underlies everything, is diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? This term has been present for a few years at many different workplaces, or as it's called, DEI, the majority of companies. And I would say probably around 5 years or so, that's when you start seeing them in a strong manner, more present. And there are many different views on this topic, right? And just a disclaimer, my purpose here is not to go into any controversial issue. I just want to bring light on how DEI can be a powerful tool and why it should be a priority for your HR priorities in 2024, or better, people and culture priorities, right? Let's forget the HR name now. Let's focus with people and culture. And again, when you think about them, there's many simple things, right? Like non-discriminatory policies. Yes, they're part of DEI. They're not the focus here today because every company should have them. It depends on the location that you're at. It depends on the country you're based, and there are laws that you have to abide to. Those points are important, but not the focus here. I would say that it's important to mention that it's very much expected by employees that their CEOs or executive leadership take a stand against discrimination in the workplace. I think that's quite important, and that's HR or people and culture. We should focus on helping our CEOs and executive leadership to take a stand against that whenever it happens. But I'll leave it at that. I'm going to start sharing here, some stats about diversity, equity, inclusion. Right. So 44% of employees agree that colleagues feel alienated by their organization's DEI efforts, and 42% feel their organization's DEI efforts are divisive. So how can an action that looks into diversity, equity, and inclusion make people feel alienated or make people feel, divided, right? I've been through that. I went through that same experience, and I'll share in a moment with you. But it's all about structure. It's all about the way you do it, right? So Some people, it's very common to get started with small actions, right? So, you go, you do a small action here, then you do another one there, then you get some feedback, then you get some data, then you understand effectiveness. And when you look at it, 6 months have passed, you've done maybe one or two actions, you have not followed up, you have not brought results to people. And then it really looks like, okay, why is this happening? Like, why HR, why people in culture is spending time with that? And as I mentioned, I've been through that in 2019 on my first experience with DEI. I was tasked with creating a program from zero, from ground zero. And the first thing I did was, let's start small. Let's talk about, a cultural committee. Let's talk about, creating groups of diversity, and did a small action here, another small action there. And I had the best intentions of making that work. And then when I start gathering feedback, I've encountered the same answers that you have here in those two numbers, 44% and 42%. The majority of the people in the company I worked for, they did not see the actions I took as authentic. They're more like, what they're saying is, big companies are doing that right now, so you're just doing to show off that you can do it, and you have the focus to do it as well. And that hurt a little bit, but that made me take a next step. That made me do some research, look into different numbers, talk to different people that have done that, and study some case studies. That allowed me to have a better vision on the issue. And what I found was, quite simple, right? If you don't have your why, your reason to do it, you're going to run in circles. And I'm sorry to tell you, that's what's going to happen. You're going to run in circles, and without a direction, you will not be able to build a framework to implement DEI actions, right? So let's take a look into frameworks. So there are many frameworks where you can build your DEI strategy. And I'm going to share with you one that I think it's very ample, it's big, you can do many things with it, but it gives you a big picture, it gives you a direction, right? So it's divided in three. It's divided into equitable practices, organizational voice, and informed action. So let's just do a quick overview here. What are equitable practices, right? It's talking about salary equity, benefits, equal access to development opportunities, everything that needs to be equal in the company, right? The organizational voice part is, are we leaving an open voice for employee feedback? Are we clear in the way we communicate, right? And communicate the DEI issues? Are we being authentic in the way we're communicating that? And the third one, informed action, is our hiring process. How are we hiring people? How are we increasing and being creative with our talent pools? Are we being, are we being open to have more accessible work schedules? There's just a few points, right? And you can look into the graphic here, and you have equitable practices right at the beginning. It's the core one, and then it evolves and spreads into the organizational voice, and then it goes into the informed action one, right? So far, we talked about company culture, DEI actions, that bring a sense of belonging, right? But at the end of the day, as a company, we need to show results. We need, increased productivity. We need higher performance. And, we have to balance that. We, as people in culture, we are people centric, but we are responsible for measuring performance. We're responsible for understanding productivity. And we are also responsible for making sure people feel that they belong into the company, right? So the question here is, how can we measure the effectiveness of DEI, right? How can we measure that employees are aligned with the company culture? And I think the biggest question of them all, is it possible to determine or define a ROI on all these, right? And I'm sorry, there are no direct answer, no direct answers to the questions here. But I would say that if we take a step back and look into the issues or the factors actually that can lead to lower productivity, I think we can have a good view on where to start, right? We've been through some very difficult years since 2020. the pandemic and everything that happened. And you look into employees often complaining that it feels like they've been working more than ever, harder than ever. But if you look at data from Gallup's latest State of the Workplace poll, since 2015, productivity numbers have stalled, or better, stagnated. They fluctuated a little bit, but they have been the same ever since. And how can we look into those numbers, right? So we do have productivity stagnated, but then you have people complaining about working harder than ever. And sometimes it's true, but a lot of times can be just a perception, right? Especially after everything we've been through. One way we can look at that is through something that can be called purpose-led growth. This term has become more and more common over the past couple of years, and it can be quite complex because it involves business and it involves people and it involves processes and many different things. But to put it simply, when we're talking about people and culture matters, it's basically putting people at the front and at the center of everything in the company. So, and there are many ways we can look into that, but I'll share with you 3 points that I think are relevant to understand that better. When we talk about higher employee productivity, right? So that's a demand. The CEO of the company, the executive leadership comes to us and says, hey, we want higher employee productivity, right? So the issue that you have in your hands there is, okay, let's analyze productivity data, right? Um, and what is the outcome we want? We want to track the trends of how people are, productive people and non-productive people. We want to push for self-improvement actions. We want to make sure people understand, have a self-awareness of, I'm performing well this week, and maybe I'm, next week I'm not performing that well, and then compared to the past week, I'm performing beautifully. So people having that self-awareness, right? Remove barriers and streamline processes as well. Take the bureaucracy out of everything. So to make it simpler here is we have a demand, and then we can look into an issue and work with outcomes that are directed to the employees, right? So we're putting the employee here at the center of all our resolutions. Let me give you another simple example. We want more value adding innovation to the company, right? So, all right. So let's connect KPIs to growth targets. So if we do that, you give a bigger sense of purpose to people. So I have a KPI, and that KPI in my team is connected to the growth target of the company. So I know that if I deliver the work I need to do, I will help the company achieve those numbers. And that brings sense of purpose and sense of belonging. I am doing a work that is changing the environment of the place that I work, that can positively affect millions of lives depending on the product you have. Also will foment people to have increased collaboration. So that's a very good thing as well. Um, Another thing that can be done, right, into the more value adding innovation, recognize and reward. If you recognize hard work and you reward hard work, people will feel enthusiastic about helping with new ideas, about being more present, right? And the same thing happens with the other feedback and input opportunities, right? We need to open up, that bridge of trust that people need to have to bring feedback, right? So it erases the fear of speaking up, but at the same time, make sure people feel the value that they have for the company, right? So there are many examples. I'll deep dive into one last one here, which is lower labor costs. There's always that question of how can we lower the labor costs of the company? How can we make sure we're delivering, but with less cost? All right. As it sounds contradictory, but if you recognize top performers, so you're spending more money, you're having a higher labor cost there, and you support your struggling employees, at the end of the day, you're going to have a higher engagement, a better retention, and better retention means less turnover, and turnover, as we all know, it's very expensive. And we're going to have better deliveries all throughout the teams, right? So at the end of the day, there are many things we can do. If we look into demand into the issue and into the outcomes we want, we can do this with anything in the company and help build that, ease that into processes, ease that into, the manager and direct report or manager and employee relations, which we're going to be talking about in a moment as well. And it sounds, it seems strange, but this is all connected to, the DEI initiatives and efforts. This is all connected. It makes sure people have a feeling of belonging in the company, right? And I think that to finalize this part two here, very important to mention, right? ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. It's quite connected to purpose-led growth, right? And I would say that, and I don't know who comes first. Maybe the purpose-led growth comes before, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. There's a lot of similarities of them, as I mentioned, but they have different focus, right? So the focus of ESG is broader, is about the environment, how the company presents itself into the environment, and how that company is following trends. The company is changing for the good, or for the bad, the environment they live in, right? Whereas purpose-led growth focuses on policy, people, and programs, and is directly connected to DEI. So there you have it. People and culture as a force for good with a focus on DEI. The last topic of the day, to me, the most important of all, they're all important, but this one is the closest to my heart, is empowering and engaging employees, right? With everything that happened during the pandemic years, work relationships became more fragile than ever, and especially the manager-employee relationship, right? So do we have an employees versus manager situation here? Yes, I think we have it, right? So this is also data, important data that shows that managers are burning out. 54% of managers are suffering from work-induced stress, and an average manager has 51% more responsibilities that they can effectively manage, right? So there is a struggle for manager to keep up with the performance demands, while employees are stressed, right? Only one in two employees is confident that their manager's ability to lead their team to be successful in the next 2 years, and 21%, in this case here of US employees, trust their organization's leadership, right? So managers are having more responsibilities than they used to, and here about 50% more than they usually could effectively manage, actually. They have to keep up with expectations, they have to meet targets. And what happens is, a lot of times they forget that they have direct reports. They forget to spend time with them. They forget to coach them, to guide them, to be not only the manager, but the leaders as well, right? So we get all of this, the pressure for results, the managers not necessarily spending time with them, and you create a perfect storm for employees to start losing confidence, right? So they lose confidence initially on their managers, and it's very easy to escalate for employees to lose confidence in their companies as well, or the whole company leadership. And this is where people and culture comes, right? This is where we can make an impactful difference. We have the ability to see things in all company from a unique perspective, right? So I tell all the leaders that I work with as a business partner, I have, or we have the ability of, just like we can do a flyover the whole situation. We can see point A, point B, we can see conflict zone, we can see everything, then we can digest and process and bring back resolution, right? This is a very important work that sometimes, because of stress, because of too many tasks, because we're still a little bit of that HR operating model, we don't do it. And I would say, if you have to pick something in 2024 to be your top priority, is for you as an HR leader, or you as an HR member, or as an HR team, to look into that and say, hey, I'm going to have that focus. I'm going to proactively go and talk to leaders. I'm going to see how the relationship between employees and managers is currently happening. What are the issues we have? What are the conflicts? And be proactive about resolving them, right? And we, people and culture, HR slash people and culture, we are true partners of the managers to navigate all people processes, right? We can help build the bridges that, sometimes are a little shaky here and there, right? And to bring trust from employees towards managers. And these can, you can do this in many different ways. And I'll share some of my, you know, personal insights, and these have effectively helped me throughout the past few years. First of them, get all sides of the story very well situated, right? Whenever there is a people issue, it's not only the involved people's perspective that needs to be assessed, but how the resolution can impact the team and the company as well, right? We have to be advisors into these situations. We have to look into, okay, is it a conflict between two people, two employees, or a leader and a direct report? How that resolution will affect the whole team, those individuals, the whole team, the department, the company structure, right? We cannot resolve the issue, but we have to be the flashlight. We have to illuminate the way to solve those things. I use that, this metaphor a lot. I'm not here to resolve your conflicts. I'm not here to do your job. Use me as a flashlight. Use me as someone that can illuminate a way for you to resolve those issues. And that's a good way of putting it, right? Another thing that you can do is develop a roadmap, right? And that roadmap can be for a number of things. I'll give an example here, right? Communications guide. We are living into remote, hybrid, back to office environments, and especially in hybrid. I think remote as well, but especially in hybrid, it's very easy to misunderstand, someone's message tone. Hey, that person wrote me this message, and I feel that I don't like it, and that can create a blocker or even conflict, right? So we need to work on writing those communications guidance, even communications policy, whenever needed, and check in with all team members, all employees. I mentioned earlier the people check initiative that we have here at Time Doctor, and it's a great example of that. Through that people check, I can understand how well people are communicating or not, and improve our, especially that at Time Doctor, we try to be as asynchronous as we can. We aim to be an asynchronous company. So communication is very important. It's one of my biggest challenges as well as a major leader, is to make sure people understand each other well, that people communicate in a good way, and that there is no conflict because of communication issues. And the next one is to help pave the road for feedback, right? For a lot of people, it's very hard to receive negative feedback. Imagine it's even worse to give negative feedback to someone. And it's our job as people in culture to guide employees on how to receive that feedback from leaders, but also how to give feedback to their leaders without having the fear of losing their job or losing the trust of their manager. As well as we have to go to the managers and train them and coach them and guide them on how to give proper positive and negative feedback, but also how to be an active listener and how to engage with employees when they're bringing a negative feedback from them, right? I think the underlying truth here is communication needs to happen, is non-negotiable. We have to make sure people communicate. It's one of the most important challenges, or let's say the largest challenges we have today into remote and hybrid environments, is communication. And it's so important that we are helping leadership or helping the company to build that, right? And last one, I would say monitor. And that monitoring is about going back to the issue. Never, never forget to circle back on any issues from all the perspectives and people involved. You go there, you help a leader, you help an employee, they resolve the issue. If you don't come back to the leader and to the manager, it will just give a sense, it is a sense of, hey, whenever I need something, I just ping there and I get the answer. And you don't collect the data you need. How long that take to be resolved? How is it? How is the impact? And that also creates a sense of accountability and trust. With the manager, accountability. Okay, HR is checking back on me. People and culture is checking back on me. I need to make sure I'm giving them the data. and trust with the employee. Hey, I have a people and culture team that is active, that cares about what I say, that cares about the issues that I have. And at the end of the day, we're helping both sides and we're helping ourselves as well because we paved the way for trust. So looking, all those points, developing the roadmap, helping pave the road for feedback, monitoring, and the first one we spoke about, getting all the sides of the story. These are just a few, and there are of course a lot more that we can add here. But I focus on these ones because we have a limited time here. Um, we covered a lot of company culture related topics. Uh, and the next one is related to company culture, but in the way that we showcase it, right? So, employer branding. And employer branding is nothing more than your company culture and a marketing promotion put into it, right? And in a lot of situations, employer branding and culture topics are worked together with marketing because marketing can help people in culture achieve the right tone and approach. Of course, if you are in a larger organization where you do have a larger people and culture structure, you might have the marketing resources internally to do that for you. But in majority of cases, you don't. We don't, right? So we have to be creative and get our friends their marketing to help us. And employer branding helps not only attract talent. We see a lot of employer branding on LinkedIn and on Indeed and on Glassdoor, and it's all about, hey, this is a great company, come work for us. Benefits and everything. Employer branding is a lot more than that, right? Employer branding is not about, if you're in the office, it's not about the career lunches, it's not about the company retreats, it's not about of course it's important, but the top computer system you're going to send to an employee, whatever in the world they are, right? Employer branding is about the people that are in the company right now as well. It's about the retention of people, right? We have to bring visibility to all our employee focused actions and prove that they are effective. There's no other way of putting it, right? We have to keep always proving to people why the actions we take are valuable, right? So, for example, the company have a lot of restraints on we cannot give different more benefits right now, or because we are globally located, we don't have X, Y, and Z benefits. Okay, how about a flexible work arrangement? Flexibility is very important to people. If you can, of course, we understand some teams, especially client facing ones, customer facing teams, it's a bit more difficult. But as flexible as we can be, people feel happier, people feel more appreciated. They'll feel that they can, align their personal lives with their work lives and make it a big, one big thing, which is, something nice for a lot of people. Also, opportunities for growth and development, right? So, okay, we hired you. Fantastic. You bring in all the talent, all the knowledge from the market to the company. Where are you going to go next, right? What are the growth opportunities? I'm not talking about vertical growth, salary growth. I'm talking about relevance. I'm talking about that person having more ability to influence the company as they become more senior, as they learn more and they develop. So they feel, uh, you know, we should look into a job or into a position not like we look into a college degree, right? So you go to college and you go there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then you're out into the world. And our company shouldn't be the place where people come and say, "Hey, I'm going to spend 1 or 2 years here, and then I'm going to go next." They should look into, they should be able to look internally and say, "Hey, I know what I can do next. I know how can I improve here." And of course, again, recognition and rewarding, very important on that as well. Opportunities for growth and developer are not just okay, take this extra bunch of work here, but people have to be recognized and rewarded as well. That's very important. And it's a tough conversation sometimes, especially as HR that we have with our executives. And it's okay. Those are important, tough conversations that we need to have. And then another one, a supportive and inclusive work environment. That's where it connects with DEI, right? So you create different culture committees, you create different groups of diversity that people with, from different places with common interests can talk. It creates a good sense of belonging into groups. And then when you bring that into the company perspective, into the broader audience, it just, it feels good. It feels nice. I have here on this slide a few more things that you can look into when we're talking about those relations and resetting expectations, self-determination, building good habits, fewer steps, how that helps, and how your role as HR, and in all those, and these, this specific page here is in our guide that we shared with you. They're quite simple, but they all have the same line. They all walk the same road here, right? We are, as people in culture, helping leadership to understand their own issues, right? Help leadership to understand how they're going to effectively engage with people better, and how they're going to be better listeners, getting, removing the barriers they need to have. And with everything we said so far, we're still missing one big point here, which is burnout. We've been hearing a lot about burnout lately, and it definitely is one of the biggest issues we're facing right now. Uh, all the issues of people management, and then people thinking they're working more than ever, and then managers having a heavy workload. It's just difficult to manage, and we at People and Culture, we're responsible to a certain level to understand and analyze and almost like predict that burnout is about to happen, right? There are a few things that we can do, right? And I'll summarize some of them here for you that can help you as a People and Culture leader or People and Culture team member to understand, right? So first thing, analyzing workday analytics or workday data to identify risks, right? So, for example, you have someone that is working unscheduled weekends, they're doing a lot of overtime hours, absenteeism, frequent distractions, right? That's a big sign. Um, when you see that, you have to go to the leadership, you have to go to the manager, and you know using the data that you have, show that there is an issue happening with that employee, and help the leaders to intervene, help that manager understand what's going on, and if you have to, jump in the conversation as well, right? um, at the same time, empowering employees to self-manage, right? So giving them tools, especially small survey tools that you can use Google Forms, or you can use a specific tool for that, where people can do post checks, or people can write about what's going on, how their feelings are, that they can create that initial, almost like anonymous sense of trust, as they will start talking more and more to you and to their managers to help understand what's going on, right? Providing mental health support. This could be through assistant programs, through tools that have mental resources, or even stress management programs. There are many different ways you can look into that. And I think a very, very important one is to destigmatize mental health conversations, right? It's very difficult for you as an individual to come and talk to someone, especially to your boss, to your leader, or manager, that you're struggling with your mental health, right? Because there's always that feeling that I might be considered weak if I do that. I might lose my job if I do that. And as People in Culture, we have to make sure people are, they feel the trust. They are capable of talking about those issues without having that fear, right? And another important thing that correlates to what we just said in a few moments ago is that flexible work arrangements. Testing the waters to see if more remote work capabilities or asynchronous scheduling would help. And of course, you have to monitor the results. You have to use the data to write a proper policy. But sometimes offering that flexibility can be, very, very important to employees. Here, just to summarize important points as we're reaching the end of this, the three most important topics we talk about, that, the flexible work arrangements, the supportive and inclusive work environment, and opportunities for growth and development, right? I'm bringing those back here because they wrap up the discussion. We have to help managers and employees to talk, but we can also help building those policies for more flexibility, bringing that supportive, inclusive work environment, and making sure people feel appreciated, they feel welcomed, they feel free to talk and to speak and to give feedback and receive feedback. And that people walk into the company not knowing where they're going to reach, but knowing that if they do good work, they'll have a chance to learn more, develop more, and achieve that success. We are now reaching the end of today's webinar, and I do feel we covered a lot of ground. As I said at the beginning, each company, people and culture team, HR team will have their own priorities. You will have your own priorities to define. But I wanted to highlight the ones that, we worked through today and they are important to my core and I wanted to share with you, right? We talked about transformation, evolution, diversity and inclusion, engaging with employees, those are all interconnected, if you don't if you don't transform a structure into being a more welcoming and accepting being as a people and culture team, you're not going to be able to tackle diversity and inclusion, you're not going to be able to see further ahead the engagement issues that your employees and leaders will be having, right? So those are all very important topics that I consider it can be, if you don't know, like it could be, I've done so much work in 2023, I don't know where to start in 2024. Thank you so much for your attention today.